All right, welcome back to The Explainer. We are diving headfirst into an absolutely massive Premier League clash today. Leeds United squaring off against Brighton and Hove Albion at Elland Road. I'm Analyst A, your resident data specialist, and sitting right across from me is our tactical guru, Analyst B. We've got a really high-energy, rapid-fire breakdown for you today. We're talking statistical probabilities, structural matchups, and the key metrics you need to know to understand exactly how this game is going to unfold. That's exactly right. We are stripping away all the noise today. We're looking strictly at what the tactical setups and the hard data are telling us. Look, we've got Daniel Farke's newly safe Leeds side hosting Fabian Hernzeller's European chasing Brighton. It's just a fascinating clash of styles, motivations, and transitions. Let's get that first big number up on the board.
44%. Right out of the gate, our market-adjusted Poisson model, which factors in current form, table strength, and home advantage, gives Brighton a 44% probability of walking away from Elland Road with all 3 points. The draw is sitting at 25%, and a Leeds win comes in at 31%.
Yeah, and that 44% number is heavily influenced by the psychological context of this matchup. Think about it. Leeds are sitting in 16th place with 45 points. That means they are completely safe from the relegation scrap. They are literally playing with house money right now. On the flip side, Brighton are up in 7th with 53 points, and they are utterly desperate for European qualification. But honestly, a relaxed, pressure-free Leeds side carrying real momentum from a 3-1 win over Burnley and a draw at Tottenham, that makes this the ultimate trap game for the visitors.
Okay, let's dive into this tactical clash, because it's a good one. Farke is rolling out a compact 3-4-2-1, but let's be real, out of possession that operates heavily as a 5-4-1 low block. He wants defensive protection first and foremost, absorbing pressure and just waiting for the right pressing triggers to launch direct transitions. Hürzeler, meanwhile, deploys a 4-2-3-1, and it is a very possession-heavy setup. Brighton absolutely thrives on aggressive midfield rotations, inverted wingbacks, and pinning the opposition deep in their own half. Right, and statistically speaking, it's a classic battle of territory versus efficiency. Brighton is going to dominate the ball. They're going to look for progressive carries into the final third, while Leeds will look to maximize their output on the counterattack using minimal touches. Exactly, and overloads are the entire crux of Brighton's attacking strategy. They use the elite technical control of Pascal Graz and Carlos Baleba in the double pivot to totally orchestrate the game's tempo. They pull opponents into the center, right, only to suddenly shift the ball and create these massive wide overloads. By flooding the half spaces with bodies, they force Leeds' rigid 5-4-1 defensive structure to shift violently sideways. They make them chase shadows, which inevitably creates gaps right in the penalty area. And honestly, when those gaps open up, the underlying data shows Brighton knows exactly how to exploit them. Looking at our projected expected goals, or XG, for this match, the model has Leeds generating between 1.25 and 1.35 XG. But Brighton, powered by those wide overloads you just mentioned, projects noticeably higher at 1.55 to 1.70 XG.
Which perfectly aligns with that territorial dominance we're expecting to see.
Precisely. So, based on these XG anchors, the most statistically probable scoreline our model spits out is a 1-2 Brighton victory. But keep in mind, an alternative high probability script is a 1-1 draw. That becomes especially likely if Leeds can maximize their set-piece efficiency completely against the run of play. We absolutely cannot ignore the injury report, though, because it fundamentally alters the tactical vulnerabilities of both sides. For Leeds, missing Ilya Groove and Noah Okafor is huge. Groove's absence means Farke has to rely heavily on his captain, Ethan Ampadu, in central midfield to break Brighton's relentless counterpress. If Ampadu gets caught dwelling on the ball, Leeds won't even be able to build from the back. It's that simple. Yeah, and on the Brighton side, the data shows they are heavily impacted by losing Mats Wiefer. Without him anchoring the center, their defensive transition metrics take a noticeable dip. Plus, Kaoru Matoma is a major fitness doubt. If he doesn't start, Brighton loses a massive chunk of their progressive carries and wide 1v1 threat out on that left flank.
All right, let's pivot slightly into Section 1, the vertical battle and fantasy anchors.
So when we look directly at the individual matchups in the penalty area, we have two veteran Premier League strikers going toe-to-toe here, and both are sitting on exactly 13 league goals this season. Danny Welbeck is Brighton's central focal point, and the model gives him a 36 to 39% net finding probability for this match. That slight edge over Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who sits at a 32 to 35% probability, is directly tied to Brighton's higher team XG projection. I also really want to point out Yankuba Minte at the bottom there. A 20 to 24% scoring probability for a direct winger, that is excellent. He just scored in Brighton's 3-0 demolition of Wolves, and he provides a truly lethal transition threat if Leeds overcommits even a little bit. But translating those numbers onto the pitch for Leeds, it's all about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. The man is coming off a massive penalty goal away at Tottenham. Leeds knows full well they aren't going to win the possession battle today, so their entire attacking trigger relies on direct transitions. They want to bypass Brighton's high counterpress entirely by firing direct crosses toward Calvert-Lewin, treating him as the ultimate penalty box target. If he wins those aerial duels against Lewis Dunk and Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Leeds can instantly flip the pitch.
Which brings us to a really crucial part of the game in Section 2, discipline risk and card accumulation.
Look, when you have a team that attacks with relentless wide overloads against a deep low block, tactical fouls are inevitable. You just have to break the rhythm somehow, right? And often the only way to stop a progressive carry through the half space is to simply take the man down. The data flags 2 massive red alerts for card accumulation on the Leeds roster today. Ethan Ampadu is sitting on a staggering 11 yellow cards for the season. As the primary midfield stopper tasked with disrupting Brighton's double pivot, his risk profile is absolutely off the charts. And right behind him is Jayden Bogle, the right wingback, who already has 8 yellow cards to his name this campaign.
And here is the tactical why behind Bogle's 8 yellow cards: wide 1v1 defensive isolation. In Farke's system, when Brighton swings the ball quickly to exploit those overloads we talked about, Bogles is going to be left completely isolated in space. He's going to be staring down Yankuba Minte or Karua Matoma if he passes that late fitness test in high-intensity 1v1 duels all afternoon long. And we know this, when a wingback gets isolated against elite dribblers in the Premier League, their probability of committing a cynical, tactical foul absolutely skyrockets.
To finalize this discipline analysis, we have to look at the officiating baseline. While the final referee appointment always requires matchday verification, the reverse fixture between these two sides was officiated by Michael Oliver. A referee with Oliver's profile averages right around 3.2 yellow cards per game. So we are looking at a moderate baseline card environment here, but one that is heavily skewed toward Leeds' defensive stoppers simply due to the structural mismatch.
So it all builds to this final tactical and psychological friction point. Brighton clearly has the data advantage, the XG superiority, and the structural overloads to control the pitch. But man, they are desperate. The pressure of that European race is resting entirely on their shoulders. Meanwhile, Leeds United are mathematically safe. They're sitting deep in their 5-4-1 low block, armed with a 13-goal striker in Calvert-Lewin, and they are playing with absolute freedom in front of a raucous Elland Road crowd. The tactical board is set. Will Brighton's structured, possession-heavy desperation ultimately crack under the weight of expectations? Or will their elite midfield controls simply suffocate Leeds entirely out of the game? That is the big question you need to keep in mind as kickoff approaches. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.